Hey, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. This is our third episode of the new year, and what better way to start the new year than to bring back a longtime friend of the show, co-owner of Brooklyn Music Factory, and all-around awesome and fun person, Piera. So, Piera, I'm glad you're back on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure. Piera is one of those people who is a wealth of information about a topic that is very present in the minds of the listeners of this podcast, and that is the topic of summer camp. And it's around this time every year, Nate, that you and I jump into the summer camp topic because this really is the time of year where you should be in full preparation mode for summer camp. And so while in that mode, it's good to have these thoughts and good to have a guest like Pierre come on to discuss this topic again in depth. And we're going to add to the body of knowledge that we've created about summer camp because in past years, we have covered a lot of topics about summer camp on this podcast. We've talked about enrollment, summer camp sales, pricing strategies. We had Greg Jenner on last year to talk about gamifying your summer camps. We talked about camp curriculum in past years. And I actually think I'm even forgetting one other episode that you did with us, Piera, about this topic. I was looking like back through the many episodes we've done, and I couldn't quite find it in the back catalog. But we wanted to add to that body of knowledge today to talk specifically about uh, staffing your summer camps and a very particular topic, which we're going to jump into in just a second, about maintaining, I'll just say very vaguely because I don't want to steal Pierce Thunder, but maintaining teacher morale and building up and edifying your summer camp staff. I don't think this is a topic I would have thought of myself, but in talking to Piera, I know that this is kind of a key component in the success that Piera has had in leading BMF's summer camps. But before we jump in that conversation, I do want to point out a few things. One, we do have a free episode guide for the podcast, and that episode guide categorizes our podcast episodes in the past, all 150 something of them by topic. So you can go to GregoryMusicStudio.com/7FMS, download that free guide, and go to the summer camp tab. You'll find all those episodes I was just talking about. That's the first thing. Second out of three things, we do have more summer content or summer camp content coming, including a webinar and summer camp curriculum. More information is available on this episode page or in the email that you received this episode in, like the announcement that we just released this episode. And then finally, before we jump into it, thank you guys for being so patient. One of the tools that Nate and Pierre uses in their summer camps is Big Music Games, which is a sponsor of this podcast. You can find out more about Big Music Games at bigmusicgames.com/7FMS. Big Music Games is an interactive web app for kids age 4 to 14 that makes learning music exciting and fun. It's designed by real music teachers, and these games help kids master essential skills like melody, rhythm, harmony, and even songwriting. And with 15 levels of challenges in each game, students stay engaged and motivated as they level up their music knowledge. So go to bigmusicgames.com/7FMS. You can find out one of these tools that Nate and Pierre uses in the summer camps. Woo, woo, woo. Okay, that's a lot. Pierre, I have some questions for you. First
Right in
off,
time. No, I'm just kidding.
I love it. I love it. So, in talking about all the things we can talk about with summer camp, you brought this up as a really important topic. And I even want you to introduce it. But the reason why is you said that you talked about this group that you're in where you get asked this question all the time. Can you unpack that for us a little bit? I want people to really understand why this is such an important topic. The devil's in the details in making a successful business. And I think you can start to unpack those details for us here.
Sure. Well, I lead this small business group, which are primarily after school and summer camps and often programs that have both.
Hmm.
And this topic comes up often once summer camp is on the horizon and then throughout the summer. How do we maintain our teacher morale or counselors? Some camps call them counselors. At Brooklyn Music Factory, we have teachers. How do we maintain our teacher morale? How do we maintain their stamina? And how do we remain as joyful, happy teachers to welcome our campers every week? It is challenging because summer is long. It's totally different than when you're teaching lessons in the after school program throughout the week. Maybe you have a student for 45 minutes and then you have another student for a half hour and then you have another student for 45 minutes. And it's individual and after individual. And it's for the afternoon from maybe 3 to 7, right? So, but summer camp, they're coming in first thing in the morning, right after their breakfast. And they're staying with you throughout the day. And so it can be, it can require a level of energy that is really different than during the school year. In addition, you are caring for them at a different level. You are tying shoelaces, you are opening juice boxes, you're putting band-aids on scraped knees, you are helping them get their backpack off the hooks, you're taking them to the park on a 95-degree day. And all of these factors create some wear and tear that are different than in the after-school program when you're maybe teaching your lessons in an air-conditioned studio or heated studio or whatever season it may be.
Yeah. Um, I, I don't want to belabor the point on this, but why in this business group that you're in,
Yeah.
why is this such a present topic in the mind of all these different people that they're asking
Yes.
for your advice on this, or they're talking amongst themselves? Like, what do they
Right.
see is at stake? What do you see that it's at stake here?
Right. So you walk into any store, business, service, if the people who work there are happy, it immediately trickles down to you as the customer, right? And so the customer experience is very much a reflection of the worker experience. If the people who work at a place, at whatever kind of service or store, are unhappy, that immediately trickles down to you. I'm sure you've walked into, maybe to rent a car, and the person at the counter is cranky and miserable. That immediately trickles down to your experience of it. Now with a car, rent a car, you just take the keys and you leave, and you're like, wow, that person, was really awful to work with. But when you have people's children in your care all day long, if your staff aren't happy, if your staff aren't joyful, if your staff aren't enjoying their job, if there is a toxic energy, if there is low morale, if there is tiredness across the board, that is instantly going to translate to those kids' experience of your program, which will then translate to when they go home and talk to their parents, which will then translate to your reputation out on the street. It is a trickle-down effect that goes far beyond the inside of your walls. And so the schools talk about it often because it is really challenging to maintain morale, to maintain stamina. Like I said, it requires a totally different level of energy running summer camps. And in order for your kids and families to be happy and for your reputation to be what you want it to be, you need to maintain staff morale. That's sort of ground zero in terms of reputation and happiness.
I know we're going to get into the practicality of how to do that, but I just want to point out already, this is an X factor. This is something that everyone needs to think about as an intangible that will increase the quality of your summer camp product. Before we get into those practicalities, though, Nate, thoughts, questions, pushback. Want to hear from you.
I want to, yeah, no, I mean, Piera and I have obviously talked about this dozens, if not hundreds of times over our partnership together. But Piera, I want to share my perspective for our listeners because I think I really fell short as a business partner and a leader for years on this. And I wrote on my dry erase board, used to use language like, it's a different beast, Nate. And I wrote on my dry erase board, why did it take me so many years to understand that? And so what strikes me is that I used to listen to you talk about summer, and to be clear to our listeners, one of the reasons that we work so well together is that you have really wonderful autonomy and ownership over this program that's grown beautifully. And then you are very generous in giving me autonomy to be a CEO and to be in my role, right, in the company. And so you used to use this language with me, and I didn't hear it's a different kind of energy. I used to hear language like, it takes more energy. And I would think that would be so offensive to Ben if he heard that. Because, of course, He's teaching sometimes 8 hours in a day, just like you weren't saying that. You were saying it's a different energy. And in order to better understand a program and then therefore be able to grow it and serve your customers better, you have to really be able to, the whole team has to understand the nuances of each service that we provide. And I'm really like, this is a little bit of just me being like a little bit humble here and being, you remember that, like, Piera, you remember like the push and pull, almost like a conflict that we would have for a while.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's like, it took me so long. So I'm sort of sharing this, Daniel, to other founders who are thinking, I can't run a summer camp because of X, Y, and Z. I would say, number one, yes, it's a different service, right? Peter is actually here sharing one facet of what makes it so unique and what can make it so powerful within your music school. But number two, I would just say it's different, and it takes some time to really get to know those differences and then to honor the differences in creating a successful version of it. Okay, back to you, Daniel. I wanted to share that last piece.
Yeah. Piera, when did you start realizing that this was affecting the quality of the camp? When did you start to take this seriously as something that you needed to put time, energy, effort into? Obviously, you've got camp curriculum, you've got the marketing for the camp. You consider those to be important things. Everyone else just intuitively say those are important things. What helped you to see that this was as important, if not more important? When did you start noticing this?
It's a great question. I mean, I would say fairly early, I noticed that it was a problem, right? But it took me years to be able to really articulate it and identify what I was feeling and sensing. And then some more time to really understand the different elements that have to be adjusted in order to make it better. So I don't know if that really answers your question.
No, it does answer the question. So
yeah.
I have an immediate follow-up question then.
Yeah.
What helped you feel and sense that early on, like you said there? Maybe you have like a story. I don't know. Maybe you have a story, or maybe it was just trends that you saw within your teachers slash counselors that were like, this is not good. Like, do you have a class?
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'd love to hear it.
Well, number one is super concrete, right? So Nate and I, on a yearly basis for a long time, have asked teachers for their feedback. We just had a 3-day annual planning, and I was looking at a book that had the teachers' actual words and feedback of the camp program in my hands. And so one concrete thing that was obvious to me at the beginning with teachers were giving more negative feedback at the beginning. And over time, the feedback has changed to really almost entirely positive. I mean, when I was reading those comments in the past few days, it was really wonderful to read how happy teachers were in their experience working at camp. And so, wait, what was Daniel, can you say the exact question again? Because I feel like I got.
So the question was, what trends did you notice early on, or what feedback were you receiving from teachers that helped you to realize that this was an issue?
Oftentimes early on, the concrete feedback was, it's tiring. You know what I mean? This is not sustainable. I can't manage this for an entire summer. Just teachers expressing despair at the ability to do their job well. Also, you could just read the energy in the room, it would be, off to the races, great start, and the energy would fall fairly quickly after a few weeks. And there was this hump in the middle of the summer, end of July, early August, which was just so difficult when that hump would hit, when the teachers would be halfway through and know that they still had a whole nother half of summer left. And that week 4, week 5, those weeks were just always really challenging in terms of just energy in the room. And so, those two things, the concrete feedback and then just simply feeling the energy in the room, being in the room. And then I would say the last thing is parent feedback.
Mm.
And so over the course of the last, I don't know, Nate, what is it? How long is, I know we've been around for 15 years. Camp, what is it, 12? What are we
Camp,
at, 12?
yeah, 10
Um,
plus.
okay. So over the course of those 10 plus years, the parent concerns, complaints, grievances have gotten less and less. There was a time when we were first starting where I was on the phone on a regular basis, nurturing families and trying to help them through various grievances. And over the course of time, as this part of what we do has improved, those calls have gotten less and less. And so to me, there's been a very direct connect between how happy the teachers are, how joyful the experience is, and how often I have to talk to parents who are unhappy.
That is huge. I'm going to ask for one more angle, if you can provide it.
Sure.
The students. Did the students feel the energy of those teachers, and how did you know if they did? Because I have a strong suspicion you're going to say that they did.
Oh, sure. Of course. I mean, with the kids, it reveals itself differently in ways that you wouldn't expect. So you'll have less behavior issues, right? Because unhappy kids, kids who feel like they're in a chaotic environment, kids who feel like they're in a less happy environment, kids who feel like they're not being nurtured and taken care of, you'll get a lot more behavior issues and things that you have to manage than you would if they were happy and engaged and feeling loved and feeling nurtured. And so that definitely has shown to be a really wonderful trend as we've improved this in the program.
And in
I
the
mean, listen, you still got behavior issues. You're always going to be
of course, right,
just to
right,
be, as Nate said, in the spirit of honesty and transparency, that doesn't magically evaporate.
right.
But
And
there's an overall energy in the room. There's an overall, I'll share this. I, for years, went into public school classrooms and did music. And there were classrooms that from year to year to year were consistently joyful and felt organized and felt nurtured and felt much, quote, easier to be in. And then there were consistently classrooms that were much more challenging, much more chaotic, much more behavior problems. And the teachers who were in the classrooms that were much more challenging were often those teachers who struggled with joy and felt more chaotic and felt more stressed out and felt more tired. I knew every year going in, oh, I'm going into Miss So-and-so's classroom. I got to come in with my A game because it's going to be more challenging. Or I'm going into Mr. So-and-so's classroom and I can relax a little bit because I know that this room is going to feel a certain way. And that so often was a reflection of the teacher's joy and love for what they're doing and happiness. It really does trickle down to the kids in a major way.
this episode is sponsored by grouplessons.com. If you're looking for a group piano method that is easy to implement in your studio or school, look no farther than Piano Express from grouplessons.com. Because unlike most group piano methods, Piano Express allows students to make individual progress within the context of a larger group. And because of the at-home practice tools and gamified curriculum, students using the Piano Express method make faster progress than the average method book student. And that helps students feel excited, accomplished, and motivated to learn new music. Also, the system is really adaptable. We've got teachers using the system in their home studios, and we have many large commercial studios running our 3-room model that allows you to see up to 24 students per hour with just 2 teachers. So if you'd like to learn more about Piano Express, navigate to grouplessons.com and sign up for a free demo. You'll get to look at the method, our app and teacher guides, and we'll even give you a sneak peek of our implementation plan that has helped hundreds of studios start their group program in just a few weeks.
You said 2 things, Piera, that I think are essential for our listeners. If you don't write down anything from this episode, at least write down these couple things that Piera said. The first is you have to ask for feedback. As a founder, you cannot be afraid of feedback. You can't, and certainly you can't disqualify the feedback. I think, Piera, there was a time when we would say, oh, so-and-so said that. Remember that? Where we would ask for teachers' feedback, but then we would immediately qualify that maybe some feedback is more valuable than others.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I look back on that version of us and I'm just like, we needed some guidance. Anyways, we pivoted to an anonymous feedback form. Hey, there's a really easy way to stop qualifying feedback, you know? And so number one, you have to ask for feedback. But number two, you said, we noticed there was a problem. And that sounds so simple, right? But think about how distracted we are currently in this day and age. Everybody's so, quote, busy, and everybody's constantly distracted, and everybody's staring at their phone, etc. Those are all recipes for not noticing anything, right? And you actually said you have to actually pause and be like, I'm willing to survey the experience day in and day out and notice problems. As business owners, right, Piera, we hate when there's a problem, but actually those are what lead to the type of beautiful experience that you're directing now in camp. The willingness. So I sort of wrote down 3 steps for our listeners. First, we notice a problem. Second, we're actually willing to address them, right? So you're jotting in your Evernote or your note all the problems you're noticing in any given day. I know this to be fact, Piera, because sometimes you just would slack me stuff. You'd be like, Nate, I'm noticing X, Y, and Z. Because I knew you just like, I just need to share this now because you're more likely to address it, you know? And then number 3, you said, or I said, we're ready and willing to actually invest the resources into testing solutions, right? So oftentimes as founders, we notice problems and then we don't even write them down. We're just like, oh, that's so annoying. But then let's say we do write the list of problems down. We haven't actually even done a mindset shift to say, I'm ready and willing to address them. And then the number 3 thing is we don't even want to invest the resources into testing solutions because I'm guessing, and I'd love to hear your opinion on it, Piera, we're like so afraid that, well, we're so adamant that we're correct, right? So we're like, my solution is going to work, right? But then, of course, we don't ask for feedback to even know if it worked. Or we're so afraid we're wrong, we don't even want to test anything. You know what I mean? So like, I just put that down for our listeners. Number 1, notice that there are actually problems. Number 2, change your mind to being willing to address them. And then number 3, actually allocate resources. That means time, money, creativity.
I think then in the one item remaining, or the one question I had remaining, is actually getting into kind of the practicality of how you solve this problem, Piera. And so
Sure.
I would ask you, what are practical things that you did to help teachers overcome this energy problem? Obviously, like you said, just to lay out the problem again, teachers are working week after week after week. They're doing these summer camps. Part of them are outside for you. It's hot. They've got a lot of kids to wrangle. There's a lot of activities. They're being asked to do things that they wouldn't normally do in the classroom. There is maybe an emotional load that they have that they wouldn't have in week in, week out lessons that are year round. That's kind of what I've gathered from you from the rest of your comments earlier in the episode. So my question for you would be, what did you do to mitigate this? How did you help teachers? How did you support them in what they had to do in your summer camps?
Sure. Well, as I shared before, it was a series of adjustments, right? It wasn't just one magic wave of a wand. Some big adjustments and some small, and took some experimenting to figure out really what would make a real difference. And I would say there's three main components to making real change when it comes to maintaining joyful teachers and maintaining their stamina throughout the summer. Number 1 is model tone, right? So tone comes from the top. If I'm running around stressed out, snapping at people, getting frustrated easily, running my camp from an emotional space, that is instantly going to trickle down to my teachers in the same way that if my teachers weren't in a good space, it would trickle down to the campers, right? And so the number 1 job I consider my number one job is to be an excellent model of what I want my teachers to be. So that means I'm doing my job in an energized and joyful way. And this needs to be done throughout. And that's, from when you're all doing a wonderful drum circle to when a kid falls off the monkey bars and possibly broke their arm. This is a tone that needs to be from A to Z. Like I said, I need to model it myself. In addition, in that category, I make sure to hire managers who also can model that tone, because the managers are a huge part in modeling that as well. So that's my number one point in terms of a concrete action that you would need to take. Number two is what Nate was referencing when he summarized what I was sharing before, which is communication, right? So I have this little mantra that I say in my head, which is don't be late to communicate. And
I love that.
what that means to me is communicating immediately allows for no space for buildup, right? You know that there's this, The Onion. There's this headline in The Onion, which I love. It cracks me up. And I've had it in my head for years, which is argument in person's head getting pretty intense. And so I think that is such a brilliant headline because it is so true. The more time and space you give something, the more it will build up as frustration and the more it will come out as overall tone and negative energy and will create a toxic environment. So I find that if I say something immediately, it allows for me not to go to that place. Then it will also allow an immediate conversation with the teacher. So for example, a really easy one is teachers coming in late, right? It's a problem. They are musicians and they're not used to getting up at 6:30 in the morning. And so when a teacher comes in late, instead of getting frustrated and sort of holding on to it, I will just say, hey, arrival's at 8:30. Bam, it's over. It's not coming from an emotional or reactive place. It's just I'm communicating it immediately. Done. They hear me. It's over. And I've also made sure to enforce policy. But then there's bigger issues. If I feel like maybe a teacher is struggling in their classroom, they're maybe having trouble managing a challenging group of campers in 1 week. The sooner I can communicate with them, how can I support you? What do you need? The better. If I leave this till Wednesday, they're already starting to fall apart, right? In our camp, the kids come from Monday through Friday, and then we'll have a new group the next week. So I've got this short window to make sure that this experience for these campers is fabulous. And so if I wait till Wednesday, we're already 2 more days till their gig on site. And that tone has already been set. That band is already falling apart. And that teacher is already losing their stamina and their joy factor. So I try to, as Nate said, notice as soon as possible and communicate and offer support as soon as possible. Other areas of communication that are really important is to actually build in spaces for communication, in my opinion, on a daily basis. So because camp is busy, we are moving, right? We have got an agenda and we are doing it every day. And so at our camp, we actually start every day with a morning, I call it a huddle, call it a morning huddle. It's 10 minutes, not a lot of time. And it allows for the connect that in order for me, number one, to read their energy. It gives them a space to share challenges, to talk about problems, to discuss issues. From day to day, my morning huddles will change. Mondays, it's a lot of me, rallying. I go into coach mode, right? Monday mornings are coach mode. I'm like, all right, let's have another great week. That's my Monday morning meeting. By Tuesday, it might be, hey, how did yesterday feel? Anybody have a challenging group? Anybody have a space where you need support? Anybody have anything that didn't really work for them yesterday? So Tuesdays will often be that meeting. Wednesdays sometimes is a little bit of a nurture. I might do something that is just, a positive focus or some way to sort of get through that hump day to lift spirits. I have something super corny that I do, which is a compliment circle where the teachers will go around and compliment the person next to them. And it's so corny and it always works and makes everybody feel warm and fuzzy and wonderful. And so these daily check-ins are so important because the teachers know they can count on them. And it gives me an opportunity to have that moment of connect, right? It gives the teachers that space where they can really share. Like I said, sooner than later. The later you wait, the worse the problem gets. And then I have, as Nate said earlier, I've learned to really learn how to listen. My tendency is to talk. I am a talker. Me and Nate were talking yesterday about, so I don't know what it was, fitting something into a box. And I was like, my words never fit into a box. I got way too many words. I got way too many things to say. And I have learned how to shut up and listen because when I listen, I will often hear things I don't expect. And that's in different forms. In one way, it's our morning huddle. In other ways, it's sending out an anonymous survey if teachers don't want to say it, openly. But making sure that I really listen and come from a place of discovery, right? So I am trying to always come from a place of discovery. That's really important when you're communicating directly with a teacher who might be having some challenges. If there's a teacher where you're feeling like their performance is waning and you need to have that conversation, it still needs to come from a place of discovery first, right? Not accusations. This is about listening. This is about a place of discovery. So often, the root of the problem is not what I expect. And then it is really important for me in this communication to immediately ask myself, what have I done to not set them up for success? There is always something, right? Even if it's like as simple as your teacher's coming in late or whatever it is, what have I done to not set them up for success? It might be as simple as not laying out a clear late policy, right? Maybe that's what it is, or it might be that they've come in late for a few days and I didn't say anything, or if, like I said, if they're struggling with their energy throughout, what have I done to not set them up for success? And that allows teachers to open up more. It allows them to feel heard. One of the things that I really felt really great about in the teacher survey that we looked at in the past few days was how teachers felt heard and how they felt that any issues were helped with and addressed. And that felt really wonderful because that was not always the case.
I mean, we literally didn't we have someone, Piera, say, "I'm so grateful that you guys always ask."
Yes, I know. It felt really wonderful, and I just felt that I really have finally learned how to do that part of my job right. So just to summarize, the first two were, number one was for me to model tone. The second one was to communicate. Don't be late to communicate in all those different forms that I shared. And then the last one is a really funny one, which is to schedule joy into their day, right? It seems so backwards, schedule joy. That sounds lame, honestly, when you say it like that, right? But I have found that to be essential in maintaining the teacher's joy factor. I'll give some examples. Number one is I assign teachers to roles that I know that they really enjoy. Like we go to the playground. I have a couple of teachers who love to play basketball, and I always put them on the basketball courts with the kids who want to play basketball. They love it. It feels great to them. They need it. They get to move their bodies. And I have so many wonderful photos and moments of teachers shooting hoops with the kids and having a great time.
I love
Um, yeah,
that.
Yeah.
if I know that a teacher really loves to work with the little ones or a teacher really loves to work with the older ones, I try as much as possible to give them the kids that they really enjoy for that week. If you love those 4 5s, I really try to give you those 4 5s if I can. And if I can't, and I know that you love them, I make sure to communicate with the teacher. I go back to communicating like, hey, sorry, I couldn't give you those littles this week. Just registration was blah, 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 whatever it was. But acknowledging that I'm always thinking about what they prefer and their needs. It's not there's no perfect formula, but putting them in a position where they can actually genuinely have fun and come from a place that feels authentic and joyful is so helpful. I had this one teacher who loves to do karaoke on a rainy day. He always gets the karaoke station and he's in there singing karaoke with those kids, just like the kids are. And it's wonderful. And it gives him that little boost that he needs at maybe 1 o'clock on the third rainy day in a row. You know what I mean? I give lunch breaks to teachers with their friends. I know that certain teachers really like to go to lunch together. And so when I can, I'm like, you guys, take the 12 o'clock and you guys take the 11 o'clock lunch break. And I make sure to really honor those lunch breaks. That was another comment, Nate, that I was so happy about. Somebody said that lunch breaks are always honored and they appreciate that, meaning it's 11
Right.
o'clock, it's your lunch break. Bye-bye. See you later. Don't stick around. Goodbye. And take your full hour. So those little things make a big difference for teachers. Like I said, scheduling joy into their day. Another thing that we do is we start every day with a morning jam. We have some teachers who welcome the campers and are on the floor, and then other teachers who do the morning jam. And in that morning huddle, I'm like, all right, who wants the morning jam today? And you got a few teachers who are like, I need it, I want it, And we're musicians, we love to play. They start their day like playing, whatever it is, Fleetwood Mac and the covers range, let me tell you. This summer, midsummer, something that was wonderful out of that is they started to plan their morning jam in advance. They were like, will you bring in your sax tomorrow so we can play that tune that we wanted to play? And so one of my teachers started bringing that in, and they were making plans for their morning jam. It was something that they could really look forward to. And then, the last thing is you need to read the room as part of this scheduling joy in their day. I try to read the room in the same way that I read a room of kids. Sometimes we've had, 100-degree days here in New York City. We've gone to the playground, everyone comes back, everyone's real tired. I say, all right, normally we do like a big open play at that point, but instead we're going to do a quiet meditation. Teachers lay down, kids lay down. I put on some guided meditation from, YouTube or whatever it is. And we take 15 minutes to do that. I even have Nate, you have this, but I've encouraged the teachers to use it, a pillow and a blanket to use it during their lunch breaks if they want to take a rest in a studio. But allowing flexibility in sort of reading the room. Where do they need joy? Where do they need rest? Is so important. And it's okay. You know what I mean? It's okay to look at the room and make a pivot and be like, you know what? Everyone needs 15 minutes to lay flat on their back, including the
Yeah.
teachers. So those are my 3 top things. I'll just say them back: model tone, communicate, and schedule joy. There's other little tips when I was thinking about this in advance that don't necessarily fall into those categories. Like we have an 8-week summer. And I encourage teachers, they're required to do at least 4, but I encourage them to not do many more than 6. Some teachers like to go all 8 and they can rock it. But teachers oftentimes in advance can't really anticipate how long 8 weeks feels when it's camp. And so I encourage them. I say, you know what, take a week. Let's make your schedule, and you take 6 weeks and we'll choose which 6 weeks. And I have to put the schedule together. I also try to mix it up with my camp managers because the camp manager job is very taxing. And last summer, I actually had 3 camp managers who all took turns. One took all of July, and then she took a week off at the beginning of August, and she came back. And that was a huge adjustment in terms of just simply scheduling and allowing for those spaces where teachers or managers can breathe. And then one last little tip, just in terms of scheduling, these little things have made a big difference, is I learned a few years ago to hire a completely separate team for my extended day program. So a lot of camps go till maybe 3 o'clock, and then you have your kids who need to stay till like 6 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to have my daytime teachers work the extended day. And I learned that if you hire in a totally different team for your extended day, I find great matches, or teachers who maybe work in the public school system all year long and want a little extra money during the summer and are wonderful with kids and are responsible, and you can leave them with your extended day kids, but don't necessarily want a full-time gig in the summer. Those kind of teachers are a great fit for extended day team. So I have learned hiring an extended day team that is totally separate, what a difference that makes in terms of teacher stamina, energy, and their ability to really, keep up the energy factor. So that's my tips. I hope those are helpful and concrete enough to really be able to implement some of them.
You made some comment like I should listen more. I talk too much, and my only thought is no. Everybody who's listening to this podcast wants you to talk more right now. I promise you, because this stuff is solid gold.
Great. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Because I've been trying to learn how to shut up a little.
Yeah, the only addition I was going to make was just that it can't be understated that if you want to grow like a really big camp, these things take time. And you use the language so well where you're like, oh, this sounds corny. The reality is, I think you're running one of the largest songwriting camps in the nation serving this age range. And so I say choose corny over whatever the quick fixes our listeners have been choosing. Yeah, Daniel and I work with a lot of founders right now, and the tendency is always looking for a quick answer.
Right.
Always. They always want to know, is there a solution that I can implement right now that'll change everything?
Right.
And everything you've shared is, yes, you've given concrete fixes that they can actually start right now. But what they should expect is to learn how to implement those over the next 3 years if they want to grow a significantly profitable, awesome camp.